Good morning, welcome, and thank you all for being here. As a reminder, masks are required in federal government buildings. Bonjour, bienvenue à tous et merci d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui. Un petit rappel que les masques sont requis dans les édifices du gouvernement fédéral. I'm pleased to introduce the Honourable Mary Ng, Canada's Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development, and the Right Honourable Anne-Marie Trevelyan, Secretary of State for International Trade and President of the Board of Trade for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. They will provide an update on the launch of negotiations for a free bilateral trade agreement between Canada and the United Kingdom. Their remarks will be followed by a Q&A session. Je suis heureuse de présenter l'Honorable Mary Ng.
I am happy to introduce the Honourable Mary Ng, Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development, as well as Anne-Marie Trevelyan, UK Secretary of State for International Trade and the President of the Treasury Board. They will provide an update on the negotiations of a free trade agreement between the UK and Canada. Their comments will be followed by a question-and-A period.
To turn the microphone over to Minister. La parole à la Ministre Ng.
Good morning. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Thank you for joining us here today. I want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Before we begin, I want to start by saying that Canada unequivocally condemns Russia's egregious invasion of Ukraine, which is a direct challenge to the rules-based international order. Let me be clear. Those who undermine the rules-based international order should not benefit from it. Canada's Ukrainian community number more than 1.3 million people. The current events in Eastern Europe are profoundly felt in homes and communities across Canada. And alongside our allies, Canada stands resolute against authoritarianism and with a democratic Ukraine now and in the future. I am very pleased to welcome Secretary Trevelyan for her first official visit to Canada. Though this is her first official visit, I know that Secretary Trevelyan has strong roots here in Canada, as her dad was a Canadian journalist. So really, what we should be saying is, welcome back. It's great to have you here in person and to celebrate the long-standing friendship between Canada and the United Kingdom. And it's that friendship that brings us here today. I am thrilled to announce that Canada and the United Kingdom are officially launching negotiations towards a new free trade agreement. Je suis ravie d'annoncer.
I am thrilled to announce that Canada and the United Kingdom are officially launching negotiations towards a new free trade agreement.
Instructing our negotiators to be ambitious and to seek a modern, progressive and comprehensive free trade agreement that best reflects Canada's and the United Kingdom's shared values. In 2021, the UK was Canada's third largest country trading partner in goods and services, with billions of dollars flowing between our two countries. Secretary Trevelyan and I have talked at great lengths about the importance of promoting rules-based international trade and strengthening supply chains by building on our trade relationship with the United Kingdom. Canada and the UK are going to negotiate a new benchmark agreement that will raise the bar for women, racialized and Indigenous peoples, as well as for small and medium-sized enterprises. Our government has made it a priority to focus on a progressive trade agenda that is inclusive and sustainable, an agenda that advances high standards for the environment and for labor, and one that helps our businesses thrive into the future by benefiting from digital trade. And we're thrilled to be doing this with one of our closest partners. Canada looks forward to negotiating an agreement that will benefit our economies on both sides of the Atlantic. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Canada is one of our closest allies. Our two nations have deep cultural and economic ties stretching back over centuries. We share huge ambitions for the future of trade, and together we are carving out a trade relationship that will shape our economies for decades to come. That's why I'm thrilled to be here in Ottawa to officially launch negotiations on a new, ambitious and progressive free trade agreement, building on a partnership already worth over £19 billion in 2020. Étant ici au Canada, je voulais profiter de l'occasion pour pratiquer mon français et m'adresser à certains.
And I am also here today and hoping to use some of my French. We are delighted to be able to negotiate a free trade agreement and strengthen the rules-based order. This will allow both individuals and businesses in Canada and the UK to fulfill their potential. And I'm very anxious to be able to see what the possibilities of growth are for both of our countries and to shape the world of tomorrow.
Of our existing trade relationship, as well as champion those areas where our two nations already excel, from our world-leading finance firms to our thriving tech startups. We want to go further and faster than ever before to boost trade in areas like digital, financial and legal services, and research and development. The UK is the second largest exporter of services in the world, and almost half of our exports to Canada were services in 2020. So we want to make it easier for British and Canadian businesses of all sizes to trade with one another by breaking down some of the non-tariff barriers that some small and medium-sized businesses feel have held them back. This deal will seek to secure ambitious and comprehensive digital provisions, which not only make it easier for us to trade with one another, but also to give consumers greater choice. So as both our nations strive for net zero by 2050, it will provide the foundations for carving out a cleaner, greener economy on both sides of the Atlantic. It will mean we can step up green trade by exchanging ideas, technology and expertise, from electric vehicles to carbon capture and storage. As two female leaders in trade, our determination to advance opportunities for women through trade and investment will shine through this FTA. We will strive towards including a dedicated gender chapter, which will help address barriers faced disproportionately by women in trade. And as the UK seeks CPTPP membership, the £8.4 trillion trade bloc of which Canada, of course, is a key member, this FTA will bring our two nations closer than ever before. It showcases the UK's commitment to building a truly global Britain, strengthening trade ties with fast-growing economies across the Americas. And finally, in light of the awful crisis unfolding in Ukraine, our FTA will strengthen our bonds as security allies determined to defend the international rules-based system. As partners in NATO, the G7, G20 and Five Eyes, we stand united in our shared commitment to the cause of freedom. Merci.
We will now take questions from media. We will start in the room here and go to media on the phone afterwards. One question and one follow-up only. Nous prendrons maintenant des questions des médias.
We will now take media questions, beginning with journalists in the room and followed by those on the phone. One question and one follow-up only.
Mike Blanchfield, Canadian Press. What challenges do you see for Canada in this negotiation in the agriculture sector?
Well, I think I like to think about this agreement not in terms of challenges, but in terms of opportunities. What you heard from Secretary Trevelyan and myself is that we are launching these negotiations that build on what is already a very successful trading relationship, and that we're going to create a modernized agreement that is going to create even more benefits for Canadian exporters and for British exporters and importers, and that's the way that I would like to see this. That's how I see the way in which we are proceeding on this very good start to these negotiations.
Any thoughts on hormone added Canadian beef and having access to the British market? Anything specific there you'd like to say?
Well, what I would say is that those negotiations are beginning, and what I would say to all markets across the world, including the United States, is that the high quality of our beef and of our products and of our producers is second to none. So I am here to sell brand Canada, boy oh boy, and I'm going to keep doing that.
Steve Chase, Globe and Mail. I just have a couple of questions. One is, one of the challenges we see when Canada and the U.S. are both negotiating a trade deal with another partner is that there's a timing issue. Sometimes the partner wants to negotiate with the U.S. first. This happened in the case of South Korea. Do you expect to reach a deal with Canada before you reach a deal with the United States, or will a deal with Canada be contingent or follow upon a deal with the United States, given the interconnections between our two countries? And by that I mean the U.S. and Canada and the auto trade and so on. So Is Canadian deal going to come before a U.S. deal for you?
Steve, thank you for your question. So I'm really excited that we're formally launching our FTA negotiations with Canada today, and we're going to be working at pace to get to what we hope will be a really deep and transformative trade deal for our businesses and our communities to be able to make really great use of for many decades to come. I continue to have discussions with your neighbours, the US, on all sorts of issues, but the two are not connected, and I am really excited that our Canadian FTA discussions are starting today.
Okay, so I hear you saying it's possible you could sign a deal with Canada before you sign a deal with the United States. Just on the other factor, when you guys first announced the continuity agreement, you said that negotiations would begin the next year, but a year has passed, and now we're into 2022, and you've signed deals with Australia and I think New Zealand and Singapore. Why has it been a slow start for the Canadian negotiations?
So, Mary can answer, but I don't think it has. We said that within a year of the TCA coming into force, we would start these FTAs, which we are. You had a process, which I'm sure you would speak to better than I, which you have just completed, which is why we're now able to crack on.
So Secretary Trevelyan is absolutely correct. We are on time, and we are starting this as we said we would. It is within the 1 year of the trade continuity agreement being into force. And of course, Canada and the UK put the trade continuity agreement together so that that predictability that our businesses and our exporters were looking for, that's what the TCA has provided, and we are exactly on schedule. And as the Secretary says, we've launched this today. We are on pace, and our negotiators are hard at work, and both of us are going to ensure that our negotiators continue that at good pace. And I'm very confident that we will have a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom that is, that is going to be a high bar and a new benchmark agreement, as you've heard from both the Secretary and I.
We will now take questions over the phone, et maintenant nous prendrons des questions par téléphone.
Thank you. If you have a question and you're using a speakerphone, please lift your handset before making your selection. If you have a question, please press *1 on the device's keypad if you have a question. There will be a brief pause while the participants register. We thank you for your patience. The first question is from Charlie Mitchell from The Times. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi there. We know that negotiations started informally on the CETA rollover in early 2018, which was essentially an MOU, but it wasn't signed until November 2020, so about 2.5 years later. What are the chances that you can agree a comprehensive free trade agreement, which is far more complicated, within a year, as you said to the Canadian press?
Thank you, Charlie. So we are formally launching. Our teams have been hard at work for some time, and we'll be welcoming the Canadian delegation to London next week, which is great to get stuck into a wide number of chapter discussions, and we will work at the pace we can. We're very keen, as I have said before, that we should get quality over speed, but I think we are both focused absolutely on that, and we also are both focused on some key areas and what I would call perhaps the 21st century version of free trade agreements, which is going to be broad and brings forward, as we say, some of those areas on climate change and how we can work together with the multiplier effect that that brings, alongside the really important issues to both of us of women's empowerment and making sure that SMEs and the flows and the opportunities for SMEs run by women and those from marginalised groups have every opportunity to access the finance and the opportunities to grow into the big companies that we see between our countries trading very strongly already today.
Charlie, let me just give you a clarification on that timeline. We committed that we would enter into negotiations for an FTA within 1 year of the TCA coming into effect, so we've now done that. We've also said that within the launch of the FTA, we will endeavour to complete negotiations in 2 years. So we have our teams working hard. As the Secretary says, the Canadian team is heading to London, and we have a schedule that includes the UK team here in Canada. So our negotiators are at work, and we've put our people to it, and they've already started working.
Okay. Second question, have you pressed upon the Canadian government the need to boost supply of oil and gas to fill European shortfalls?
So, as you know, Charlie, the Prime Minister is very focused on helping our European neighbours to find alternative oil and gas supplies to Russian ones, and we are working at pace with all our allies to think how we can assist in doing that, whilst, of course, continuing to focus on the fact that one of the solutions to this in the medium term is going at pace to move to clean and renewable energies so that we have less reliance on hydrocarbons across the piece. But I know that our Canadian partners are thinking very closely about how they can be part of that solution, and we will be continuing to work across governments to find, to be able to support those particularly European nations for whom this is a really big challenge.
Thank you. The next question is from Murad Hemedi from The Logic. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hello. So Secretary Trevelyan just said that the deal will seek to secure, quote, ambitious and comprehensive digital provisions. Could you explain what those digital provisions are? What specific changes to the non-tariff barriers in the trading relationship is the UK seeking with Canada on digital files?
Thank you. Well, as part of the next generation of business trading, getting digital tools to be the norm and indeed to be the tools that help businesses to grow is what we want to encourage, and we have the opportunity through a free trade agreement to really drive that forwards at pace. The UK has just signed a digital economy agreement with Singapore, a world first for any European nation, which sets out all of these issues in detail. But really importantly, digital can both strip away cost for the consumer and, of course, make ease of business much greater by allowing digital flows to take away some of the strains and the existing barriers that we have at the borders through manual processes. So we're very keen to continue on the work that we've done with Singapore and work with Canada to look at some of those key areas of digital development.
Murad, that's a really excellent question. And of course, as you know, you've covered it a lot about the strength of the Canadian technology ecosystem that is here in Canada. We've got excellent startups and scale-ups across the country, forging into new areas, whether they are in clean tech or whether they are in agri-tech, and where we have strength around financial services and so forth. And we want to make sure that in this agreement that those companies really are able to, as they develop in Canada, that they innovate in Canada, that they are starting up, but that they are scaling up, but that they're accessing new markets like that in the UK. If I just draw and a particular example, there is a terrific company. It is a medical devices company that's building simulators for doctors to train pediatric cardiology surgery. It's a company here that is here anchored in Canada, but they've actually got a contract with the Children's Hospital in Liverpool to do exactly that. So that's one example, and I can share many others. But this is really about creating a win-win, especially for those enterprises that are part of the digital economy today, and to help them enter into those markets and to grow both ways.
Thanks, Minister. And just in terms of on another file, on the digital sales tax, the USTR has, had some pretty strong words for Canada about the consequences of Canada moving ahead with its own digital services tax. The UK has had a similar dispute of, and the possibility of Section 232 tariffs. Have you spoken with your UK counterpart about some kind of united front on the digital sales or digital services tax issue with the U.S. reaction?
Well, Murad, I have certainly spoken to my colleague, the USTR, and look, here's what we're committed to do. We're committed to implementing a multilateral solution for digital services tax that has been arranged at the OECD, and we are confident that we are going to work with our partners, including the United States, at a multilateral solution. But Canada has also made a commitment to the people of Canada for fair collection of taxes. So should the multilateral agreement not proceed, it will be only at that time that we will implement the solution specific to Canada. But we are very encouraged, and we are very much working collaboratively with our multinational partners to implement that solution, which is a multilateral one, designed and through the OECD. So that is where our focus is, and I'm confident that that's what we will be doing.
Thank you. The next question is from Janice McGregor from CBC News. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Good morning, Ministers. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you both about your ambitions for expanding and liberalizing trade as it pertains to opening up government procurement contracts. This is an area not every country is willing to open up. The Americans never want to do this in their trade deals, but it was an important part of CETA. And as you think about the future Canada-UK arrangement, how much opening up should we expect of government contracts?
Thank you. I think we were discussing procurement this morning in our bilateral meetings, and I think this will be an area that we will want to look at together and think about how, particularly as we look to some of the green trade and climate change challenges that we have, how we can work most closely together to effect the sort of changes to not only those industries but the supply chains across the piece that our businesses are now challenged to meet as they decarbonise in order to help us meet our net zero commitments by 2050. And of course, achieving that will in part be through slick and effective procurement change. So it will certainly be an area that we will all be discussing.
Janice, thank you for that question. And this is a really important area. Secretary Trevelyan and I talked about it. And we talked about the opportunities, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises, and the role that government procurement can play in adopting or buying from those small and medium-sized enterprises. I know here in Canada, I am working very closely with my cabinet colleague on this to create greater opportunities. I often tell people that my job is the Minister for Startup, Scale-Up and Accessing New Markets, and scaling up those small businesses through government procurement is certainly something that we are doing here in Canada. I'm doing that with my colleagues, but to be able to create opportunities for companies that are owned by women or that are owned by Indigenous peoples or racialized entrepreneurs. So there's a real opportunity there, and those negotiations, of course, are starting, but this is an area, I think, of opportunity that both Secretary Trevelyan and I see in this agreement. And
I'd like to ask you about kind of the other big thing that emerged out of CETA and that continues to be on people's minds when they think about this trade relationship. I know the British Secretary doesn't want to talk about cheese, but I have to ask about cheese because the British access to the Canadian market expires next year. Does that mean there's a hard out for these negotiations? Do you need to do this before June of 2023 or December of 2023 so you don't lose that piece of Canada's market? And is that kind of something that was built into these talks, that they do have to be done maybe quicker than some of Canada's previous negotiations have to unfold?
I would say that the ambition on the timelines is the ambition to reach a high quality and a progressive agreement, and that is very much what Secretary Trevelyan and I are very focused on. So the timeline has very much to do with how we can have a trade agreement that is a modern one, that provides opportunities for those businesses, like digital as an example, like those in the, in the green economy, but also, to ensure that that we have the modalities that are just so important to both of our economies, as we are both very focused on economic recovery as a result of COVID-19. So those are that's what's driving our ambitions to work hard at the negotiations and to work hard on the timelines. It is the ambitions of trying to put something together that really will serve us in our economic growth and to grow in the green economy and in those areas around digital that is very much a part of both of our economies.
Thank you. There are no further questions registered at this time.
This concludes today's press conference. Thank you again for joining us today. Should media have questions about the launch of negotiations of the Canada-UK Free Trade Agreement, kindly contact Global Affairs Canada's Media Relations line. Ceci conclut notre séance d'information d'aujourd'hui.
Conclude this press conference. Thank you for joining. If you have questions regarding the launch of the negotiations regarding this free trade agreement, please contact with the media at Global Affairs. Thank you.